And now, the moment you never thought you would hear in your entire life.
Finally, after months of drought and deprivation, it's time to fly Qatar business. Mind-blowing, a remarkable business class product. There's just so much to love here. The world's best business class seat. Because as you guys know, I love Qatar. You're soon going to get CQ Suite, which is named the world's best business class. First place is going to go to, drumroll, Qatar. Qatar is truly in its own league. If you don't want to be spoiled forever, don't fly them. So if this is what cost cut Qatar looks like, I'm fine with that. My expectations were so high, and even then they were exceeded. If you have never flown Qatar before, actually, as I said, the service can either be like amazing or mind-blowing. This flight has been mind-blowing.
This is a warning about Qatar Airways. This video is not going to be that dramatic. There are going to be a lot of cuts in this video. This is no crying from disappointment video, but it does kind of hurt. Like, not as much as when Tati exposed her best friend James Charles hurt, but still. And if you don't know what I'm referencing there, congratulations. Firstly, I hate these videos. I hate watching them, and I hate making them even more. But this time I really need to, because what I've learned through this 2-month process is something I feel like you guys could really benefit from knowing. I've waited for 2 months to make this video because I honestly didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know if I should even make a video. I was scared. I'm still nervous because the last thing I want is to get banned from Qatar Airways. This video is more of a feedback video, and we'll get to all this stuff in the end, but basically I just didn't know how to get out of this situation. All I know that I can take away from it is 2 valuable lessons for you guys. And as you saw, I have referred to Qatar Airways as the world's best airline with the world's best business class so many times, it's insane. There probably isn't a single other freak on the internet who has said that as much as I have. This video will focus specifically on 2 things. And these 2 things I started to discover over 2.5 years ago when I took my first ever trip with them. Now, before I waste more of anyone's time, the first point is really only relevant if you fly business or first class, or if you're a super hardcore av geek. Although the second point hopefully is a valuable takeaway for everyone. I also want to let you know that I will be doing a Q&A on Instagram this evening, European time. So if you have any questions you want to ask about this or anything else, you can head to the link below to my Instagram, follow me, and take part in the Q&A. One last disclaimer, I'm sorry this is drawing on and on and on and on, but I have spoken with over 2 dozen people about this, everything from frequent flyers to industry insiders to online experts. And I think of everything, the best way to summarize what I've learned through this experience is the following response I got on my forum post on Flyer Talk. You are simply experiencing Qatar Airways customer service. As bad as QR in-flight service is good. Before this, I had only really seen the in-air part where the service is incredible, and I was so enchanted with the perfection that I thought was Qatar Airways that my view was very one-sided. So here's the full rundown of everything that's happened. It all started about 2.5 years ago when I was going to take my first ever trip with Qatar Airways. I booked a flight from Cairo to Doha to Stockholm, and both flights from Cairo to Doha and Doha to Cairo were supposed to be operated by 777s. To my surprise, not one, but both of these flights were changed from 777s to A330s with a slightly inferior onboard product, but it wasn't a big deal. Fast forward 4 months to when I was recording Economy Week between Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar, which is one of my most viewed videos ever. What I decided on, I'd spend days searching itineraries where I could get 2 different aircraft on each airline so I could get a more diverse experience and not just have one aircraft to compare. So finally, for Qatar Airways, I settled with a 777 from Mumbai to Doha, connecting to an A330 from Doha to Beirut. And in this situation, I had no idea the aircraft had changed until I arrived at the bus gate, getting off the bus, the doors open, and I go, what the heck is this? This is not an A330. A 777 was standing there, and they'd made an equipment change again. This time it was a little inconvenient because the whole idea of comparing 2 different aircraft with different seats was ruined because I couldn't make any changes at this point, but I figured, you know what, again, it's not a huge deal. Thank God my surprised face was as emotionless back then as a sleeping sloth, so no one could see the shock underneath the cover. So both of these equipment changes weren't really a big deal. Then let's fast forward to last summer when I booked a ticket from Muscat to Doha to Bangkok round trip. Now, between when I booked my flights in March and I took them in June, both of my flights from Muscat to Doha and Doha to Muscat had at least 3 equipment changes during that time online. The seat maps changed, my assigned seat changed, everything was constantly changing, and still they managed to surprise me on both flights when I was in the jetway, realizing that yet again there had been another change. But once more, it doesn't really matter, so I thought, no big deal. In fact, in the start of this year, I flew Qatar from Doha to Kuwait and I got a positive surprise upgrade because I was supposed to be in their old A350 business class, but when I was in the lounge looking at the seat map, suddenly it had transformed to Q Suite. So that was a nice surprise, but again, an aircraft change. Now these equipment changes started bothering me a little bit in February of this year when I had bought my mom for Christmas a once-in-a-lifetime trip for us to take together as mother and son on my favorite Middle Eastern business class products, where we're going to go all the way to Thailand, and I get to show her everything I love about the Middle East and Oman especially, and then get these amazing flight experiences together before going to Thailand and having my favorite food in the world and just loving all our time together. This was really the most high stakes trip I'd ever booked, so I decided to get us Qatar Airways 777 Q Suite from Berlin to Doha, and I managed to book his positioning flights from Sweden to Berlin for about $100 per person. Now I knew even before this, given the history of aircraft changes and the hours and hours I spent every day tracking flights on my phone, I knew that you can be on a route that is confirmed Q Suite. You can go to Qatar Airways flight on the Q Suite page and see which cities are always supposed to have Q Suite. I knew that several days a week, if not every other day, these flights will still be substituted for planes that don't have Q Suite. So I was checking the seat map like every 3 days, and sure enough, 4 days before departure, my heart dropped as I went in to see the seat map and it had been changed to their old business class. And I mean, it's a fantastic product still, the service is amazing, but I wanted my mom to experience the best of the best. I wanted to do that together and I wanted to show her what I love so much about Qatar. So obviously this change was a little more inconvenient than the last time. What ended up happening then was a little more because I called up customer service at Qatar. I told them about the situation. Hi, I'm on a confirmed Q Suite route. The aircraft was just changed. Do you know why this happened? And is there any chance we can rebook? And basically the agent just said, tough luck. This is what you get flying Q Suite. There's a little warning on our website that it might change. We don't guarantee product, so if you want to change, you'll have to pay a change fee. And at that time, I didn't put much thought into it. I just thought, oh well, aviation is complicated. Aircraft have to be rerouted. This stuff happened. And it wasn't until, again, after this last situation, which I'm going to tell you about, when I saw a forum post on Qatar Airways Flyer Talk where I really sort of got perspective on this and realized how bizarre it is that they were so unaccommodating. First, I want to emphasize that Qatar charges more for Q Suite flights than for non-Q Suite flights. They have what's called a Q Suite surcharge, and they have a select group of destinations which you can see on their website that are guaranteed Q Suite routes, even though they very often get traded for non-Q Suite aircraft. And here's the weird thing where everything was kind of put in perspective. I can't think of a single other industry where a company would get away with doing something like this. Can you imagine ordering an iPhone 8 Plus and Apple delivers an iPhone 7 to your door and they just say, hey, tough luck, it's still our product. That's the risk of shopping online, and no, we will not compensate you for this. Or what if you order a truffle pasta at a restaurant and they suddenly bring out a tomato lasagna? Qatar Airways' response to these situations is, well, all our products are top notch, so it doesn't matter what you get. Can you imagine if Apple or a restaurant or any other industry was doing the same thing? What if the restaurant brings out the lasagna, doesn't tell you that they didn't have the truffle pasta, and just says, well, all our dishes are delicious, it doesn't matter, and will still charge you for the truffle pasta? No, that's not how it works. Qatar Airways will say, due to operational reasons, this stuff happens, we can't guarantee anything. But similarly, the restaurant can say, hey, due to operational reasons, we're out of truffles, so here's a tomato lasagna. The difference is that the restaurant will always notify you. In the end, I had to pay an additional $36,000 1,000 miles out of pocket and $300 to reroute my mom and I through Zurich, and thank God there was no equipment change this time. Even after this though, I wasn't upset with Qatar. I mentioned something small at the end of that video, but really it wasn't a big deal. I was still just as in love with them as ever. And then, oh my God, I was peeing myself with excitement because I was searching flights home to Europe and I found a ward space in Qatar Airways first class on their A380 from Doha to Frankfurt. Finally, I could compare this product to Emirates and Etihad and I'd get just the pinnacle of the Qatar Airways experience. But I'm sure you can all guess what happened next. So fast forward to me arriving in Doha. I was spending a night there before my connecting flight to Frankfurt, and at 7 p.m. the night before my flight, so 13 hours before departure, I get a call, and to my surprise, it's a Qatar Airways agent on the phone. Sir, we would like to inform you that due to operational reasons, there has been an equipment change on your flight tomorrow, and it will be served by a 777 instead of an A380, meaning you have been downgraded from first class to business class. If you'd like, you have two options. Either you can wait for 2 days until our next available first class seats to Frankfurt, or you can fly in business class like we've currently put you in and accept a 75% refund of your ticket as compensation. So my first two questions in this situation were, is it possible for me to fly first class to another European city tomorrow? I don't mind. I see that there are seats to Paris. Can you put me on that flight? No, sir, you'd have to pay a change fee for that. I also asked, are you sure I'll get 75% compensation even being on a British Airways mileage ticket? And he said, absolutely. Then I asked, okay, so if I decide to wait for the flight in 2 days to Frankfurt, and keep in mind I'd booked a connecting flight the same day as I was supposed to arrive in Frankfurt, so I'd have to sacrifice that. So I just said, if I stay here for 2 days, will Qatar Airways provide some kind of accommodation or hotels? No, absolutely not. That is only for connecting passengers. So then the choice was obvious. I just figured, all right, I'll accept the downgrade. I'll take the 75% compensation. That's not a bad deal for business class. The next day I get to the airport where the extremely friendly, as usual, check-in agent was very, very apologetic and accommodating. She called over her supervisor who gave me a document, which I'm going to show here, promising me 75% compensation. The caveat, which I hadn't been told about before, was that I would have to go to the ticketing office in Frankfurt City in order to get my compensation paid out, which no one had told me about on the phone. So at this point I'm like, So I told them I have a connecting flight the same day from Frankfurt, I can't do this. And they go, all right, well, try going to the ticketing desk at the airport. So another, and I regret to say this, incredible Qatar flight later, I arrived in Frankfurt. I went straight to the ticketing desk, and the two people working at Qatar's ticketing desk there, they gave me this look at my document, looked up, and said, no, this is a British Airways ticket. We won't help you with this. You need to call British Airways support. So I pushed back a little bit, pushed, but to no avail. They were not budging. And so the online disaster ensues, which brings me to mess number 2. At this point, I had two plans. Firstly, I wanted to contact the Swedish ticketing office, so I contacted them and they just responded by telling me to reach out to feedback@qatarairways.com.qr, I think is the address, which is basically the general email support line. I also reached out to the Qatar Airways media department, and this is what I got. We very occasionally have to change aircraft on a given route, but sometimes there are operational reasons why we have to. We pride ourselves on the quality and service in all our cabins, and on those few occasions when a passenger does not get the cabin class of choice, we always ensure they are fully compensated. We are sorry that you were not able to travel in the cabin booked on this particular flight. Then the response to my second question was, in fact, we rarely change our aircraft and only do so when forced to for operational reasons. Our award-winning Q Suite is being rolled out on more and more services globally. Okay, interesting responses and delusional. Just think back to the restaurant, operational reasons when we're forced to. If you check any flight, you will see that equipment changes on Qatar are not very rare. So at this point, I pulled up my sleeves, I sat down on my computer and I thought, okay, Let's write an email and explain the whole situation. After a few days, I get a response. Now, Qatar Airways has this nice little disclaimer at the bottom of their emails, meaning I cannot read you or show you the actual emails because I don't want to get sued. So I'm going to do my best to paraphrase. Basically, they told me, this is a British Airways ticket. We will not help you. I then reached out to British Airways, who unsurprisingly said, at least I thought it was unsurprising, Qatar Airways are the ones who downgraded you. They're the ones who should compensate you. And I think that makes sense. I then wrote back to Qatar again, explaining what British Airways had said. A week later, I sent Qatar another email nudging them to see if they'd got a response. And then I got the answer where things started to get sketchy. Here's where things took a real turn south, like all the way to Doha south. The agent responded that they had received a message from British Airways saying that I had paid an incorrect amount. In fact, instead of 50,000 miles, the price I should have paid was 98,000 miles, and therefore they would not pay me any compensation. Now, let's take a step back because I have a few comments. Firstly, it is virtually impossible to pay the wrong price with miles since there's a set price that is always consistent. Not only that, but here's British Airways' old and new award chart. Do you see anywhere on these charts, in any bracket, in any cabin, a price of 98,000 miles specifically? Nope. Me neither. As you can see, the old chart which says 50,000 is correct. Taking a step even further back, how does it make sense that Qatar wouldn't pay compensation because I hadn't paid enough? A revenue ticket changes price all the time. So if I buy a ticket for $500 and that ticket later costs $1,000, does that mean I'm not entitled to any compensation just because I didn't pay the highest price? No. And it doesn't even matter how much first class should have cost, which was incorrect, by the way. It matters what the difference was between first class and business class. And even if I paid 50,000, I paid more than the price of business class, which is what they should be concerned about. And now, the moment you never thought you would hear in your entire life, but I have to applaud US Airlines. They handle compensation exceptionally well. 3 years back, I booked a United airfare from Oslo to Seattle for $600 in business class round trip for me and Oscar. Well, our flight from Europe to the US ended up being 24 hours delayed, which is crazy. But United not only put us up in a really nice hotel, but they gave us a dedicated phone line to call with agents who already knew exactly what the situation of our flight was. So we didn't have to explain everything. We just called them up. It was a direct number with no holds. So the situation was not stressful in the least. And because of that, they ended up allowing me to change the return portion of my trip as well, and even change a completely separate United ticket because I could leverage this situation. And not only that, but they paid $1,100. $1,100 in compensation on a $600 ticket per person. That's impressive. So having said that, back to Qatar, who were denying me any compensation for a downgrade from first to business class because I had paid the wrong price. 2 emails back and forth later, the agent was finally generous enough to offer me compensation. A $125 Qatar Airways voucher. That doesn't even cover the taxes of this ticket. So a few more emails and loads of time spent going back and forth later, I started getting really fed up. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to Google the email of the head of customer service at Qatar, try to reach out to him and see if he can help me instead. No response. So at this point, I asked the agent that I'd been emailing with if he could please forward my case to a supervisor, and he did. And finally, after 7 or 8 emails back and forth, I was offered $300 as a Qatar Airways voucher in compensation. I still don't want a voucher, and $300 doesn't cut it. And the funniest part is the agent made it seem like he was Oprah Winfrey, just handing out charity money like, here. So there you go. That's my situation. That's where I currently am. Whoa. In many ways, I feel like when you've been infatuated with someone for a long time and you see them as this perfect figure, and suddenly your vision is just shattered and you realize they have a huge glaring flaw that you had never seen before. And it's forcing you to reevaluate your entire view of that person. So at this point, I've given up. I guess I should just take the $300 and call it a day, or a month, or 2. And the reason I bring this whole thing up is twofold. Firstly, Qatar Airways is infamous for equipment changes, and they're completely savage about how they handle it. If you're paying a premium to fly Qatar or fly Q Suite, the odds of you getting ripped off and not getting what you paid for are quite significant. I don't want anyone to be disappointed, and I almost feel bad having raved so much about Qatar when this is a very real risk. One guy on Flyer Talk, and this blows my mind, said he had booked 4 flights in Qatar Airways Q Suite from Chicago to Doha to Malé in the Maldives, and 3 of 4 flights, 3 of 4 were changed to non-Q Suite planes. So in the end, although all 4 had been Q Suite when he booked it, only 1 had Q Suite when he was actually on board. Secondly, it really is true that the service is as terrible when you're not in the air as it is incredible when you're in the air. Sending all these emails, I really felt like I was throwing a ball, it suddenly hit a wall and just would come right back and land next to me, back where we started on square zero after every single email. So those are my 2 warnings for you guys. Now, I really hope someone high up at Qatar sees this video. And if you're watching this, please send me an email. My email is in the description of this video. You can find it elsewhere on my channel too. Please send me an email, and I would love to talk to you about how we can help change these type of situations going forward. I want to help in any way I can, seriously. Qatar Airways is the world's best airline in the sky, but you have the potential to be the world's best airline, period. But not like this. I'm not doing this out of spite. I genuinely love Qatar Airways as an airline, but hopefully next time I fly them, some of these situations can have started to be resolved and we can see a change here. So next time I and you guys fly them, we don't have to have this constantly in the back of our heads. So thank you so much, you guys, for watching all the way through. I know this has been a crazy long ranty video, but I felt like it was very important to share this, and just having my perspective changed like this has been pretty wow. So I'll see you when I'm back to my old bitchy self on Monday. Until I see you then, lots of love and fly safe.